My whole business model is to help take the ick out of that sales conversation. Authenticity plus curiosity plus the natural desire to want to help somebody equals confident selling. I'm all about giving away value, but it's a slippery slope. If you spend all your time giving away the free, then what is there that they are going to want to buy? I'm very intentional, very self-aware of what I'm communicating, how I'm communicating it, and nothing feeling bait and switchy. If you are not putting the human connection as the number one most important thing in your business, then you are set up to fail.
The very thing that you do is exactly what we're going to be talking about today, helping people level up their sales. So give us a little background on how you landed on that and where the passion for sales comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Gwen Tinsley. I am CEO of Grit and Tenacity Consulting, where I support service-based female entrepreneurs and having more authentic conversations and taking the ick out of that sales piece that we all seem to struggle so much with. Sales is something that I avoided my entire professional corporate career. I hate even being called a salesperson. That is something that I even had to come over as an ick perspective. Growing up, it had my dad on my shoulders saying it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. You don't want to be in that role. The minute you stop working, everything goes away. And I just kind of thought used car salesman when I thought about a salesperson. But I kept finding myself in corporate in these client-facing roles. In fact, my first exposure to a traditional sales role, if you will, was being a recruiter for a third-party recruiting agency. And I really felt like I get to make an impact. I get to change people's lives. I get to connect them with their skill sets to somebody that they wouldn't normally get connected with on their own. And then I quickly realized that it was numbers over people. I just have never subscribed to that. I've never understood that. So I went and got my master's degree because I was like, I need to do something different. I can't be in this realm. But I fell in love with organizational behavior and really understanding why people make the decisions they do, what motivates people, how do you align your leadership skills to get the most out of people and help them become the best versions of themselves. And so I took that into my next chapter where I found myself as the office manager for a career outplacement services company. So back in 2008 and 2009, if you're old enough to remember that, it was crazy. And I was really blessed to have a unique lens to see the world through that lens. Back in the day, bankers and CEOs and all these big title people, I was taught to fear them. I was taught you change who you are, you change your approach, you change your language, you change literally everything when somebody has this big fancy title. And I got the opportunity to see them walk through the same doors that their office managers, their assistants, some of the custodial workers walks through. And it just really gave me perspective that titles aren't everything. I'm more interested in the kind of person that you are. That's how you earn and get my respect. Once I then also found Mary Kay, I realized, man, sharing your passion, selling, who would have known? So all I did was start sharing how Mary Kay was impacting my life in such amazing ways. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I earned free cars, whole 9 yards. And I took pieces of that and translated that when I went back into a more full-time job supporting a small business scale and grow their company. I was their director of sales in the online space, which is where I get that expertise from. And then here I am today. My real good friend that I worked with in that space started her business. I'm always like, hey, your story is attached to mine and my story is attached to people that I haven't even met 10 years from now. So we got to show up and do the things. I'm so grateful that she said yes, because I am in business because of her today.
It's never a linear path, is it? It's always take the next right step, do the next right thing. You're building this skill set as you go. And I think there's power in that. I think as entrepreneurs, we all need to remember it's not going to be spelled out for you. And you just have to do what's available. And that might be corporate for now. It might be that you're looking at, okay, this is kind of just what the next right thing was at the time, but what am I gleaning here?
Yes.
What am I identifying I don't love? Because sometimes that's even more indicative of what you're going to do to be successful, figuring out what you do not want to do, what does not resonate with you. So I love that you identified that you really love people more than you love playing the numbers game. I think there's people who love both, honestly. Some people love that chase of the numbers, and it's not that they don't like people or want to serve people. They're just lit up more by playing that game than they are by necessarily connection. So sounds like that's why you've been really successful having those forward-facing jobs and having your own business, is because you have that connection piece, which I know about you because I've met you and we've had great conversations. Something I want to share too that I think is really cool and unique about you and the way that you're leveraging your podcast podcast is in and of itself a strategy. You're not just one more person who has a podcast. This is really a tool for you to get in front of your ideal customers, ideal clients, and people that you can genuinely serve. So it's kind of a win-win-win for everyone. You have opportunity for somebody like me, who's a service provider, a coach, to come on and have that exposure to your audience. But then also it was a great opportunity for you to get insight, have a conversation, and provide your services. So give us a little bit of understanding of how you did that, why you decided to go that route, and how that works.
Yeah, so that's such a great question. And I'll be honest with you, when I first was introduced to this concept, I think, well, so I'll just back up and say, like, when I was first introduced to the concept, I felt icky about it. And my whole business model is honestly to help take the ick out of that sales conversation. So I'm very intentional, very self-aware of what I'm communicating, how I'm communicating it, and nothing feeling like bait and switchy. Because I don't ever want anybody to feel like they've been sold anything, right? Like I want people to buy something that they know they need, and they're confident in knowing that they need it, and they see and trust and believe in the outcome that's going to happen as a result of it. So that's like a very core value belief of mine. So interestingly enough, I was invited to be a guest on another podcast, and they had asked me. I do actually also have another podcast that it's not active, but you can go listen to previous episodes, and it was called Confidently Selling with Grit and Tenacity. And I started my business. I used that as a tool to really create my framework. Here I am. I was tapped on the shoulder by my, one of my really good friends in corporate, Victoria Mercurier. She's amazing. If you haven't heard of her, go check her out. But she said, Gwen, I'm starting this project and it involves you. And I said, great. And I would do anything for this woman. And she goes, great. I want you to be the official sales coach for this branding business school I'm starting. And I'm like, absolutely. Just whatever you need, let me know. And she goes, no, I don't think you understand what I'm asking. Like, you need to start a business. And I'm like, wait, what? So that's literally how I started and why I started a business, because she just was so convicted that women were going to want to work with me. And I'm so grateful and blessed that that's been the case. But that's how I really I'm a huge external processor. I had so many thoughts in my brain. I wanted to decorporatize myself a little bit, like take the things that I didn't like from corporate and really make this my own. So that podcast is there. So when I was interviewing with another one, they said, does that podcast, generate you new clients? And I sat and anybody that's done podcasting, it's a long-term game, right? I think we do it for the goodness of being heart-led and to add value and content, but there's the branding piece of it, where we're trying to build rapport and become the expert in the industry, build authority. But we all know that it's like a long game, right? It's the hope that someone gets in, hears what they need to hear at the time that they need to hear it, right? Goes to the show notes, downloads a thing, gets into your other funnels, and then God knows how long it's going to take for them to want to organically reach out and have a conversation. So I sat there for a minute. I said, I can't say that it directly generates any more new clients. And he said, well, it should. Well, honest to goodness, that conversation was a little ick for me. And so I was turned off on it. And I know other people that have had a conversation with him. And he's amazing, this individual, but I'm coaching him on his sales conversations a little bit too, if as a hindsight. But, because of my experience in the sales and marketing background that I had, I was able to see that what he was saying about a podcast generating new clients is like the podcast was the vehicle, but really what we were creating was a lead generation, a marketing machine, like a marketing machine that had a flow, just constant trip of, like-minded individuals, clients that I could potentially work with. And so again, going into it, I was like, I really need to make sure that this is not feeling icky. And I will tell you, I don't even care if I find clients at all through this podcast. It has turned into so much more than that for me. It is like a movement almost of just a safe space where women can come and talk about the things that we don't get to talk about if you're in corporate, very openly and honestly. I mean, things like, guys, if you're out there, I'm so sorry, but it's a fact, like, our perimenopause and menopausal and how it affects our energy and working our businesses around that. And right before we hit record, I was telling you my son is home from summer and sick. Like, I don't get to go into an office and ignore that, right? Like, we're working things in pockets of time. We talk very openly and honestly about that. And it has just, it's changed me. And I just hope that other women and individuals are just so changed the way that I am through that podcast.
I love it. There are so many more wins than can really be conveyed on like surface level messaging when it comes to a podcast. And, we have this show, but I've also podcasted for 10 years with my own show. And that was some of the biggest wins came from things I didn't really bargain on, like I was starting it so that I could grow an audience, grow a community. I was subscribed to the early podcasting gurus back in the time, EO Fire and John Lee Dumas, and saying, build a big enough audience, you can run ads, you can make tons of money with a podcast. So that was a piece of my goal, but it was also I needed something to connect with people, and I had a huge passion for sharing the messaging. What I didn't bank on was that a lot of those guests would end up becoming clients or people that I did business with. I was more focused on growing the audience, right? And that was a big benefit. It was super, super fun. But the conversations and the connection, just like you said, were some of the biggest takeaways. The real deep relationships, friendships that I've still got to this day that were formed by simply it's like having a house that you can invite people over to. And so I think it's something important not to sleep on. I don't necessarily feel like I'm the one to say a podcast is the first thing an entrepreneur should start. I think it requires a lot of grit and tenacity.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like it's not necessarily a top of funnel thing. You have to have a lot of other pieces in place. But that being said, you'll never regret starting one if you have that intention and understanding that there's way more that can come of it than just being a content machine, just being a nurture platform. It really is a great connection platform, probably the biggest one there is of all the platforms.
I mean, and again, I have big aspirations to be on stages and speaking and doing motivational talks and working in that space. And I just knew when this was presented to me in this way that it was going to take me to that level, because I was just going to level up with who I was speaking with. And again, what I've learned personally though is like my own MBA. It's like I feel like I'm in MBA school all day every day, because I just learned so much from every conversation. It's amazing. But again, and I know that you brought me on to talk a little bit about the sales things things too, but that conversation can be tricky. So that was one of the things that still to this day I struggle with, if I'm being honest. And I'm the sales expert of seeing that maybe somebody has a gap in their sales conversations and wanting to help them, but then not wanting them to ever feel that bait switch, and approaching them on the conversation of like, hey, I have this model over here. Would you like to learn more? So I'm still working on that. I'll let you know how that goes.
Well, are you willing to kind of peel that curtain back a little bit and show us and explain that behind the scenes of that strategy? Because I know we were intending, and we will still talk about sales because I think that's embedded within it. But having gone through it, like I'm familiar with your entire, I don't even know if I want to call it a funnel, but it is, it's a customer nurturing journey. So just walk us through what that looks like so people can think about podcasting and understand how it can be used a little differently.
Yeah. So I would absolutely first and foremost say that I could not have done this without the Unforget Yourself podcast. So, definitely I would say connect with them, reach out to me, or if you want to look in the show notes, have a conversation with me, because I could certainly give you the more of the back end things and kind of help to mentally prepare you for what you're really investing in. So when I did this, again, I'm 2 years into business at this point, and I was working off of Google Sheets, and, I tracked my leads in spreadsheets. Nothing was really organized. I got the bare basic minimum things that I needed from softwares to operate a business, right? So Honeybook, Flowdesk, those kinds of things that come top of mind. And so I had to invest in a real legit CRM. I had to learn jot forms and applications. I had to learn integrations. So when you talk about grit and tenacity, let me tell you, that is some grit and tenacity. I thought I would throw my computer a few times, and thank God for my my right arm, Kristen, who is my operations person. I love her dearly. And also thank goodness for Mark and Katie over at the Unforget Yourself podcast, because they just held my hand through it all. But anyway, all this is a lot of back end building, but it's so incredibly worth it. So what happens is there's an application process. And so using social media, I say that I'm taking applications to be interviewed on the Built from the Ground Up show. And I'm very specific in who I call out, because I want a certain type. My questions, even getting the questions right, it's a certain number of questions, because you don't want to deter anybody. And then what's too many questions? And, I definitely am vetting to determine does this person answer this questionnaire they got it all figured out? Because if they do, I don't want to talk to them, because that's not what this podcast is about, right? And so then, I do decline people according to whether I feel like they're going to be a good fit for the podcast. And also, does this person have a broken sales issue that maybe I could potentially fix. They answer these questions, and then based off of that, I either accept the interview application or I don't. And then, when we get onto the interview, I'm just very, very clear and upfront. Like, hey, do you know much about me? Have you done any, research? A lot of on the front end too, there's a lot of automation of emails that go out just introducing myself. So I'm introducing, it's like no secret that like I'm a sales coach for service-based entrepreneurs, right? And I'm even saying that like as if that's a bad thing. It's like I'm not a bad thing. I'm an amazing thing and help you, with service-based entrepreneurs. But right here, like already that ache is starting to show up in this conversation and I can feel it. Anyway, so all of that to say from there, it really lends itself to break down some barriers and have that very open, honestly. And I'm like, listen, that's not what this show is about. And it really isn't. Like the Built from the Ground Up show is to about champion women to success. Listen, my entire life since I was a kid, and this is stuff that I've been working through, I have been a voice for others. Like whether it was my best friend that was getting screwed over by this dude that she didn't have the guts to, tell him off. Like I was out in the front yard telling him off where to go, right? Whether it was in corporate and everybody would come to me behind the scenes and we, tell me all the things that they didn't like about the scenario, and then given the opportunity to share their voice, crickets. I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to do that now, right? So I've always been a voice for women in particular and championing them to become the highest versions of themselves. And that is what this is for me. And I feel like, I genuinely believe this, that the economy is changing, the landscape of America is changing. 2020 shifted a lot of women to have to force themselves to do, get out of their comfort zone, start businesses. And the best way to do that is online. And I think, the economy that we're seeing now, with just the world as it is, and I'll be honest with you, I don't watch the news very much because I like to stay in my bubble because fear mongering is a thing. Um, I just see the online space getting flooded even more with opportunities and people starting businesses. And I'll tell you, recessions is the number one economy where more millionaires are made because we're
Mm.
forced to do that. And so this is where I really want to champion women in particular, right? But all small business owners I'm passionate about to stay in business, to continue to show up, to be flexible. I think one of the things that you said earlier on really impacted me, where you said that that I've had like in pieces of my career, I've always like was presented to be client facing. So not being so married to an outcome, right? Not being so, hey, I, want to do what this person I saw online's doing because they're making millions, and then get discouraged when you launch your first thing and you don't. Someone recently said to me that we have to get comfortable with knowing that we're not going to be great at the first thing that we try, but we get great by continuing to try. So,
Hmm.
it's just those kind of moments that I'm hoping to just elevate and help someone hear something different that says, you know what, I'm not going to give up today and I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, I love it. So, like I mentioned, having been through this whole experience with you, which was really cool because I came via referral from another girl that we had here on the show, and I was on her show. And so, when you mentioned like you have to figure out those integrations, those automations, it was a very fine-tuned process. Like it was very organized, it was very professional. I don't feel like it was bait and switchy at all. So, I think you've achieved
Yay!
the goal of what you were trying to create. And I want people to hear that there is so much you can do with focusing in on even one platform. Like, I don't know what else you're doing on other social platforms. And like I mentioned, a podcast is very much middle of funnel, but there's so much power in that referral system and bringing people, like-minded women, into your sphere. I think that there's been a point where we have all the online marketing and online networking, which is super valuable, but and I guess this is still a variation of online, but still more personal, right? Like more actual referral based, not just, oh, we reconnected on
Yeah.
LinkedIn or we have mutuals. That's been probably a huge component of your success, which, going back to my own show, that was a lifeblood. It was like, give
Yeah.
me 3 more women who would be great guests. I think there's power in that.
So, do you mind if I just tap
Yeah.
in on that for a hot second? So, I actually am anti Instagram. So, am I on it? Yes, only because I feel like I have to be, and I know that that's a lot of women feel that way. But I outsource that. That is not something that I try and do unless I'm passionate about something, and then I'll get on and I'll do a live or something. But it's very hit or miss. I feel like Instagram has done the small businesses a disservice in the highlight reel. And again, just what I alluded to a few minutes ago about like that the people post, they don't post the bad and the ugly. They only post the amazing. And then they don't typically tell the story behind there to get that. One of my friends, Victoria, she's like, yeah, I could say that on Instagram that, I was able to have a 7-figure business and take, 3 summers off. She's like, but that would be irresponsible because yes, I was able to do that, but also the work that I had to do the last 5 years to get me there, right? There's not enough time to explain that and to really help to make that a reality. Um, and so I am not on Instagram much. And the other thing that I will tell you is like ChatGPT and AI has been a really big topic of conversation. And a lot of my clients, especially copywriters and brand designers, are like, oh my God, am I going to have a job? And what I just want to say to all of that is ChatGPT is a tool, just like Instagram is a tool, but it will never replace human connection. And I think that if you are not putting the human connection as the number one most important thing in your business, then you are set up to fail. Like you have to have human connection. And it doesn't matter what comes up next because guess what? The only thing that's constant is change. So you better learn how to adapt to it. You better look at it as like an opportunity instead of a bad thing, right? Like how can I make this an opportunity? But again, if you are investing in human connection at this kind of level, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. So with that being said, I know that's probably a huge pillar of success for you as you coach people on their sales conversations. So you're running this exact kind of a scenario and a funnel for your own business that most people might consider. Like if you just saw it on paper, be like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. That's so ick. You yourself have done a really good job at being intentional with that. But talk us through some of the other things when you coach people. What are you seeing like the biggest errors in judgment that we're making when it comes to sales? Why does it feel icky? And how do we start stepping out of that into being more aligned and having sales be something we actually enjoy?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a great question. And I'm like, there's so many different segments that I can go into. And I guess look, I'll start with this one because I hear this a lot. And um, I hear that, you either don't want to do sales calls or you don't think that they're a part of, they should be a part of your business for whatever reason. You want to write sales pages and, have your website do the work for you. And there's just such missed opportunity with that. So there's some statistics around if you're selling a $2,000 or more offer, like you need to be doing sales calls. And the big reason for that is just really clarity and confidence, building that, and not leaving it up to the other person for them to decipher what they deem valuable based in your expertise, right? So we're experts in what we do for a reason because we've been doing it for a long time. We know that what we do works. But if the other person knew how to solve their problem, they would go and solve it. And they want to feel confident. They want to be led in their sales conversations. And I think so often we drop the ball and we let them lead us. And then that just leads to businesses that we want to set on fire, from being honest. We're bringing on clients that don't value us, clients that, don't see us as in control. And so they feel like they need to control. And then we get these overbearing clients and we end up discounting or we end up giving money back or, we end up honestly just working ourselves to the bones because we never set those, structure and foundations and just really expectations in place up front. And so having honestly three, I think, really important things, or two really important things, but there's a 3-step process to get there. But the 2 things that are super important are having a discovery call. And in that discovery call, making sure that you're interviewing them, they're not interviewing you. That's a huge difference. Like if you're getting on sales calls or coffee chats or whatever you're calling them, consult calls, and you feel like you're being interviewed, let's chat, because that should not happen, right? You should absolutely be feeling like you are vetting them to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for your service and offerings. And then the second thing is a sales presentation. So I just had a client today actually that left me a voicemail and she's like, holy crap, I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. Having this sales presentation made me feel so confident and like I was legit. And for so long, she's like, I felt like I wasn't legit and I had to overcompensate for my lack of credentials. And she's like, I didn't feel that at all. And it's amazing. So
with that being said, where I really love that approach that you shouldn't feel like you're being interviewed when you're on a sales call. I know that if anybody's ever been on a discovery call, that can definitely be what it feels like. And it's something I wish I had really understood sooner. The longer I did them, the more I understood. And even like the confidence of converting most of those sales calls, I realized oh, I need to be more selective. Like, I'm not here trying to prove myself. I need to be making sure that I'm not just saying yes to everything just so that I can get the client. Because I think it only takes working with one or two people that you are just not really a fit for to realize I need to be more picky. So how do you shift that conversation so that it doesn't feel cold and you're not being like, well, I don't owe you any explanation. I'm not trying to prove myself, but still being open and allowing them to be inquisitive or addressing some of those things that might be concerns for them.
Absolutely. So, I have a sales formula that I literally live, breathe, and die by, and it's embedded in everything that I do. And it's authenticity plus curiosity plus the natural desire to want to help somebody equals confident selling.
Hmm.
So, again, when so often we see these discovery calls that are on our calendar, and because we don't really know what to say, we're not confident in what to say, or we don't know what to expect on the other end, or we're like, okay, I'm going to get rid of this question, or I'm going to have to prove my credentials because we think that it's like a Q&A session, more like, oh, they must have read my website. They should know what it is that I do. So this is just a formality for us to, iron out a few details. And then I'm going to talk about my very expensive offer and they're going to buy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so really just switching the narrative to be like, I'm not looking to just take your money. So this isn't like I'm going to send you my service list and you can pick from it. This is I'm interested in solving your problem, not band-aiding your symptom, right? Because so often people come to us with symptoms of the bigger problem, and we don't do our due diligence to dig in and find out, like, is that the actual problem or is there more under the surface? And so then we try to sell them something that's going to fix their symptom, and then what happened? They're pissed off with you because you didn't fix their problem. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just this vicious cycle. So really that discovery call is a safety net for both of you, right? Not just you, but for them too, because you don't want them spending their money on something that isn't ultimately going to help. And you don't want to also commit to somebody that you can't service and help with the areas that they need, right? So
Yeah.
having that discovery call as a safe space and really setting an agenda is one of the easiest things that you can do to kind of set the tone. It sounds something like, hey, I'm so glad that we're getting a chance to chat today, Kristen, and I cannot wait to learn more about you and your business. But what I thought we'd do today is just dive in a little bit more about what's going on in your world, what's happening that's really causing you to want to learn more about sales strategies. And then, from there, if we mutually decide that this could be a good fit, I'd love to invite you to learn more about how I can help you with my framework. Does that sound good? Right.
Yeah.
And so then that's like permission. And then you just say, well, okay, so tell me what's going on. What's changed? What's causing you to want to learn more about your sales strategies? Have you ever worked with a sales strategist before? What kind of things are you doing right now? What's working? What's not working? Right. And then from those kind of questions, and again, I'd go deeper. It's a 30-minute, if not more, like learning about you. Right. Then I'll say, well, I'm absolutely confident that I can support you in all these areas and we can iron this out. And I'd love the opportunity to share with you more about my framework. Could we connect over the next couple of days? And then it's a different meeting, right? But then that meeting has a different focus. And you're intentional about like, okay, so we learned all about you. Now this is shifted. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me so that you know me as a human, because I am a human behind this business, right? Just as you're a human. And then I'm going to tell you about my framework that works.
So you do recommend most of the time having separate calls for that? Do you feel like you lose an opportunity to really close that? Do you ever do it all in the same call, or is it always a separate conversation?
Sometimes, I mean, it really depends on the business and what you're selling. I will sometimes do it all in one call, just depending on how much energy I feel like is that, not energy, even like woo energy, but in terms of like their need is urgent and they are very interested in moving forward. I feel like if you're selling brand strategy, website design, it's so much information that they're going to get. And that's complicated, right? It can be complicated, but that needs its own time and space. So I've never lost an opportunity by doing that. If anything, I have built excitement and I have built trust and I have built confidence. And those are the things that they really look for, because again, I'm signifying that I'm not just interested in shoving you into something that may not work for you. Like, I want you to have the time and space to fully digest what I'm going to share with you so that you can make, a confident decision for yourself too.
Yeah. Yep. I love that so much. I think you've talked about like not wanting it to be bait and switch, and there's different names that we can call these discovery calls. Do you feel like most people, most buyers, most audience members are pretty savvy knowing like that's what's happening on this call? Is there anything you can do to prep the conversation so that they know? I know you said like early in the conversation you're addressing and saying, I want to get to the heart of really what the problem is here. But even leading up to that, even as you have that listed on your website and you say, like, this is a discovery call, people are typically coming into that knowing what to expect, right? Or is there something we can do to position it pretty well from the onset? Like, do you ever have clients who position that as like a free coaching call and you're making sure that you're offering some kind of a win or a takeaway and then you're able to pitch them more? Like, do you know what I'm asking? Like, kind of
Yeah,
what the
like
difference
sometimes like a
is?
strategy call
Yeah.
or something of that nature. Yeah. So, I mean, okay, to give you an example, I was coaching one of my clients earlier this morning, and she is a brand strategist for actually realtors, and then she's also a brand strategist for rental income properties, right? And so one of the things that I had suggested that she do is like in her intake form, right? Have them send a link to like their social medias or have them send a link to their property that's listed on Airbnb or and have her do some homework up front, right? And then be able to, at some point in that conversation, so yes, I'm going to learn about you and your property. And like, I hear all the things that you just said, and I'm in total agreement. Let me show you what I discovered, right? Let me show you what I, just in the little research that I did have found, or let me, give you one or two things that I would suggest that you could do that would be easy fixes, to help you see a quick boost in, whatever. I'm all about giving away value, but again, it's a slippery slope of you don't, your time is valuable and
Mm-hmm.
you and your information that you hold is worth paying for. And so if you spend all your time giving away the free, then, what is there that they are going to want to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can absolutely do it in a way to build your authority and your expertise. So it's like showing up like, hey, here's what I've already, done the research. It makes them feel valuable. It makes them feel like they're heard. Makes them feel like they're worth your time. It makes them feel confident in you already. It's a taste of like what they're going to get by coming on board as a client. And then, again, it's like, and these are the things that I suggested. These are the things that I take care of in my framework for you. And I would love to share with you more about that. Can we chat?
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that. I think it's just setting that expectation early on and then making sure for yourself, you're coming in with the confidence to know you're not just trying to prove yourself, you're really trying to hear them. I think that's the key to sales, right? Is truly
Yeah.
listening and having that compassion. And again, like we said a little bit ago, not just treating it like I'm going to close this no matter what, and I will bend and I will change my offer just to match what they need. So it's that energy you're coming into of truly being service oriented, but also not to the point where you're like, I have to prove everything and I have to give you as much value as I can. I think if you're listening to this and you've been in a sales capacity in any way, we've all done it at least once where you've been like, end the call and you're thinking, I literally just gave it all away. And there's not really much left. Like, why would they join or why would they sign with me? Because I spent way too long on that. And I offered tons of value, but really was that like the greatest service to them? Because even in that, if you're giving them a ton of value on 30 to 60 minutes, it's great. And you're giving them a lot to where they might feel like, well, I already have the win. But at the end of the day, that's probably not quite enough. So you've done a disservice to you both by giving them more than they needed at the time. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like you're kind of
Oh yeah.
denying them
So
the
it's like,
opportunity for more.
oh, I mean, so if you're a coach or something to that equation, like I found Dave Ramsey a long time ago and I would listen to his podcast and I would, attend his universities, but there was still something that wasn't connecting for our family. And so I hired a coach and that made the connection. So, you have to understand that you can give people pieces of the puzzle, right? But you have to be so convicted in like that you're the glue to those pieces of puzzles and that they cannot do and get the outcome, without your glue to it all. So, there's that kind of analogy there too.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so what else would you recommend for us if we are specifically even having sales calls or beyond that? Let's actually go beyond that. After that has happened, a lot of people are afraid of follow up. They're afraid of being annoying. What's kind of your take on that? How do we work through that where we're not ignoring the opportunities here because we don't want to be, obnoxious?
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is like one of my favorite topics. Because it's so interesting. And a lot of what I focus on in my coaching is understanding why we avoid the things that we do first. So, we can't, like, I want to help you fix it. I want to help you build the foundations, and we do all that. But we have to understand, like, why are we preconditioned to not want to follow up? And what are we afraid of? And then really pulling back the layers and going, guess what? The things that you're afraid of, you're actually creating that scenario by not doing the thing, like following up. So it's so
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me, but we create these worst case scenario nightmares in our heads, and then we actually produce those nightmares because we think that it's, equates to that. And it's just the total opposite. So it's crazy. And I'll tell you a story too. Victoria, the woman that I was telling you about earlier, when I first started working with her, she was like, when I've gotten my business to as far as it can go, I need a little bit of help. And I said, great, let's go lead by lead. Like, where are you with leads? And it was very evident that she was not following up with any of them. She was like, well, we spent all this time together and I don't want to bug them, and they're moms, and, they're busy. And if they want to work with me, they'll let me know. And how many times, and I'll ask you this too, Kristen, in your audience, but like, how many times, or can you remember a time when you're like, thank God that person followed up with me like 4 or 5 times, because it wasn't that I didn't want to. It's just life got crazy busy, and, I just didn't have the time. And I'm so grateful because they followed up with me. And that was the reason that I moved forward with them, or whatever it was happened as a result of that. And again, ask yourself, did you feel annoyed? Did you feel like, Jesus, this person is calling me again? Or in that moment where you like, this person cares enough about me to want me to be a part of whatever that is. And man, I'm so grateful for that person.
Mm-hmm. I think
Probably.
I've been a little bit in both, and I think it's all in
Okay.
delivery, right? It's all in
Right.
intention and the way that they're following up. And if I can tell that it's genuinely for my good and not just so that they can meet a quota. So I think that's
Yeah.
a huge component. I wouldn't say, like,
Huge.
as a rule, just following up makes me feel cared for, because you can certainly do it incorrectly, just like anything, right?
Such a great point. Such a great point. And so that's a part, again, such a great point. So it's part of, like, no one wants to hear, hey, checking in. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, just checking in. Did you get a
Here's the
chance to look at the
link.
proposal? Here's a link. Wait, no, like, we're not doing that. So I actually have a follow-up formula that is convoluted. So I won't go into details here, but it's basically a way for you to follow up that's adding value. So, how am I giving them more value? So do you have a podcast that maybe touches on the concern that that person might have had that you could share with them as a reiteration of the, authority that you're trying to build? Do you have a blog post, or, just how can you give them something? And it's a formula of, well, and I'll also tell you this too. So we're talking about sales calls and how people hate doing that. They hate doing them because, one, they're spending way too long talking about the things that nobody cares about, giving away way too much value. And then it ends up stalling the sales process. And then you end up having to follow up with people for far too long. And so by having a structured discovery and sales call that shortens your sales cycles, and then also you're learning how to be directive in the next step to continue the conversation so that it isn't like you naggingly following up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's, hey, we'd had a great conversation today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send over the proposal for the program that I'm recommending. Let's set a time over the next day or two to reconnect. I just know that you're going to have some questions. Most people do, and I want to be available to answer your questions. What day, works best for you, right? So they're already there. That's follow-up number one, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, after that, even it's like, hey, we had a great conversation. Here's a podcast recording that I did that I think might be of interest to you, or here's an article that I found that supports, whatever it is that we talked about, right? Like, you're caring, you
Mm.
care about them being certain in what it is that you're offering. So
Yeah.
it's a delicate thing, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's just like anything. If you have intention, you have a framework for that. It's not feeling like this desperate reactive thing where you're like, oh my gosh, I just realized I didn't follow up with you. If you know that that's all set from the beginning and the language kind of remains the same, it makes the whole sales process feel really good. That's kind of what removes the ick, right? It's all about the intention. It's about knowing exactly what you're doing. There's nuance to the details, but overall, you have a framework. So tell us a little bit more about where people can find more about your sales training if they want to dive deeper into this.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So I have a website, grit-and-tenacity-consulting.com, all spelled out. I do have a freebie, so if you want to grab that, it's at the top and there'll be a pop-up. But I do offer 5 days of free email sales training, so it's really actually meaty and awesome. But it's 5 days worth. We'll get like a quick 3 to 5 video training from me. some action items that you didn't do. I even offer to, hey, like send me what you came up with and I will give you in real time feedback. So it's a great way to kind of get in there and see my style and work with me a little bit. And then also I'm on Instagram-ish, but that's also Grit and Tenacity Consulting. So check me out there. But the best way to do that. And then again, hey, listen, I'm always taking applications for Built from the Ground Up show. So if you're interested in doing that, I'm sure we can have that in the show notes too. I'd love
Cool.
to get your application.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gwen, for the value you've shared. Thanks for letting us see behind the scenes of what's going on in your business, how you're succeeding in your own, and then also the principles that you guide your clients through. It's been super valuable, and I appreciate everything you've shared today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. You're amazing. I just love what you do. You're such a life.
Thank you. You're so sweet.